Welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast, where we focus on politics and the important social issues of our time with just a little lean to the left. We're still reeling from the election and the tragic reality that Donald Trump is now back in the White House. He's already hard at work creating his own version of an autocracy. Now, today we're with Jason Palmer, a 52-year-old venture capitalist who sought the Democratic presidential nomination and ended up winning only the primary in America Samoa. A complete unknown, Palmer worked his tail off connecting with voters across the country. He appeared on the Lean to the Left podcast last February when he outlined his hopes for America that included healing the deep divisions that beset our country. After ending his campaign, Palmer endorsed Biden and then enthusiastically supported Vice President Harris when she became the nominee. Following the election, Jason and two co-founders launched a new organization called Together, intended to mobilize young American voters and elect a new generation of common-sense leaders from all political backgrounds. Now, Jason's with us today for a follow-up conversation, and we'll talk about Trump's early actions, what he expects from this presidency, and what he's doing to prepare for the future, including offering advice to those who might want to run. Hey, Jason, welcome back to the Lean to the Left podcast, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me back, Bob. I always love your podcast.
Thank you. Hey, let's start with Trump. He's already issued executive orders pulling out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Accord. He's pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists. He's declared a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexican border, stopped wind energy projects, suspended the TikTok ban, imposed federal workforce changes, and more. Your thoughts about all of this?
Well, the main thing to think, if you're a Democrat, like I'm sure all of your listeners are, or most of your listeners are, is this is what the people voted for. You know, Trump got slightly more, 1.5 million more votes than Kamala. And so the people want some of what he's offering. There's a blitzkrieg of things that are going to be coming down the pipe. We've seen it already with the 100 executive orders. And we have to pick carefully where we're going to fight and where Trump actually is making some progress that unfortunately just hasn't been made over the last 8 years. You know, we can take each of them in turn, but we have to be very careful about fighting where the American people are with us and then just letting it go by and kind of, keep on carrying on for the things that we cannot control.
Mm-hmm. How is it, do you think, that he pulled out this victory? What cost Harris the election?
Well, I want to make a list of the top 10 things, but I'll tell you the big ones that stand out and that I wrote on my Substack a couple weeks ago is that when you dig into the data, there was 5 million less voters that turned out for Kamala than turned out for Joe Biden in 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look deeper in the data, this shows up in cities like Philadelphia and Detroit. So, like very important cities in those battleground states where lots of working class voters just didn't turn up for Kamala the same way they did for Joe Biden. Now, you could say that's partly because Kamala got a late start, but a lot of it is just because, as been written by many others, Trump is more appealing to working class voters. He's speaking their language about the pain and difficulties that they're experiencing with jobs, with inflation, with all the changes in society, with a feeling like too much money is being spent overseas and not enough is being spent at home. Joe Biden, to his credit, passed this massive infrastructure bill, which probably will bring lots of great jobs to America in the next 4 years. You know who's going to get all the credit for that?
Well,
Donald
sure.
Trump.
Yeah,
Yeah, Donald
well,
Trump's going to get credit for that.
yeah.
And so, that's a big part of why Kamala didn't win is she didn't get those 5 million votes, even in big Democratic battleground cities like Philadelphia and Detroit.
What do you think Democrats need to do now to recoup? I mean, the GOP controls both houses of Congress. It's going to be really tough for them.
It's going to be very tough. So, I mean, obviously, the number one thing people are thinking about right now, if you're involved in Democratic politics, is the DNC chair race.
Mm-hmm.
And in that race, I've advocated for Martin O'Malley being elected as the DNC chair, but I also like some of the other people that have been nominated in Wisconsin, from Minnesota,
Hmm.
whose names are escaping me right now, to be honest, but that's because this is sort of happening in the background. But Martin O'Malley was a great governor. He was also the mayor here in Baltimore, where I live. He turned crime around in Baltimore, which is
Hmm.
not something that people often say about Democratic mayors. And then when he was governor of Maryland, he was very bipartisan in his approach. Maryland became one of the strongest economic engines in the country as a result of his leadership, really worked across the aisle. So I'm a big Martin O'Malley fan for that. Now, in terms of what we should do more tactically, we really have to stand firm on the things that the American people want to improve their own economic well-being. So as Trump is kind of going off the rails, let's just say on transgender issues or transgender bathrooms or, deporting people from the country who actually were born here, citizens with birthright citizenship, we need to stand up for those things that the American people agree with us on. And they don't want naturalized citizens being shipped out of the country. They don't want them being put in detention centers. But we have to keep steering it back to economics, raising the minimum wage, making sure that people have job protections, like reinventing how unions work. Like we're way overdue in actually pushing a reform to union laws in this country. And, we should be doing more on that front. Starbucks employees are trying to unionize. Amazon employees are trying to unionize. Google employees are trying to unionize, but we still have union laws that are stuck in the 1950s when it was a very different economy. So we have to look for ways to show we're standing up for working class people. I was really impressed when AOC reached out to her own constituents because there was a poll that showed that about 10% of people in her district had voted for AOC and voted for Trump. And she went on the radio and she said, I want to talk to you. If you're somebody who voted for Trump and voted for me, I just want to hear you in your own words. Like, why would you do that? Why would you vote for Trump instead of for Kamala? I want to hear that from you. And she went on, and listened to hours of constituents explaining why. And it was because Trump conveyed he cared about the working class. He cared about their salaries. He cared about reducing their expenses. And he cared about making their work life better. We need to do that. We need to make that our number one agenda item.
Well, given the fact that the Democrats don't control either house of Congress,
Yeah.
how is that going to be possible? I mean, it's going to be a PR campaign for the next 2 years, essentially.
Not exactly. Some of it is PR. I honestly think the first month is just going to wash over, and there's almost nothing that we can do.
Hmm.
Completely unqualified candidates like Pete Hegseth is going to be approved for defense.
Right.
Personally, I agree with RFK Jr. that we do need to make America healthy again, but I
Hmm.
disagree with him on his stance on vaccines. So we
Hmm.
have to look for the places where, I wouldn't be surprised to see many Democrats voting for RFK Jr. and saying we do need to make America healthy again. But when it comes to vaccines, we need to speak up on that issue. So I'm recommending kind of a very careful stand up for the things we believe in, but just know we're going to lose a lot of votes for the next 1 to 3 months. It's going to be a full blown Republican MAGA agenda, and choose battles wisely because we're not going to win any battles for the first 1 to 3 months.
Well, after those battles are over, though, and the results begin to be felt by the American people, the Democrats should be able to come back and emphasize that.
Absolutely. I do think there's strong chance of big pickups in the 2026 election if we can kind of pick up our heads and look that far out. And
Right.
what we need to do there is we need to recruit more candidates like the candidates I was recommending, or we were recommending with together in this last round.
Hmm.
So people who are from those districts, small business people, entrepreneurs, innovators, not lifetime politicians, people who more embody the spirit of Elon Musk than embody the spirit of, you know, pick any politician who was in office for 40 years, maybe the spirit of Joe Biden, I'll say.
Yeah.
We need to find more of those young entrepreneurs who actually believe that capitalism can work for the people and who actually are willing to talk about upgrading union laws and actually talk about making life better for working class people in their jobs. People who've been farmers would be a good group of people in this category. People who have been firefighters, police officers, small business people, shopkeepers, franchisees. I felt like it was criminal during the campaign that Kamala actually worked for McDonald's when she was younger, and yet here was Trump getting the photo op being into McDonald's. Like, that's just crazy. How could that have happened?
Well, it goes to show you what a brilliant strategist the guy is when it comes to public relations.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, even now with Greenland and the Panama Canal, like this is showmanship. And, this is the biggest thing that Marianne Williamson is also running for the DNC chair role. And I don't think she's going to win, but I really appreciate some of the things that Marianne says. And I recommended that she be put on the ballot
Hmm.
uh, because she is talking about we need to find those pressure points where we can create kind of a societal conversation about the things that we believe in. And, what's our equivalent to Greenland that we should be talking about? What's our equivalent to the Lake and Riley immigration bill? Like there should be the name of someone who is an immigrant who started a company that's helping the community, that actually is the opposite version of it because criminals represent less than 5% of of undocumented workers.
Right.
And where are our examples that we're putting on the cover of our bills?
Exactly. Good point. When you were talking though about the incoming or a new Democratic chair, and you mentioned that you support Martin O'Malley, I support him too. But it crossed my mind. We need this focus on younger people, fresh faces. He doesn't actually fit that bill, does he?
Not quite. Uh, I was disappointed that, AOC wasn't elected chair of the committee that she was trying to become chair of.
Yeah.
We have gone from late 70s, early 80-year-old chair people in Congress down to 60-year-olds.
Yeah,
And
there we go. Just a bunch of kids, right?
making progress, but we really need to, I was just looking the other day because I couldn't remember, but William Jennings Bryan, when he ran for the Democratic nomination back in 1896, he was 36 years old and he was
Mhm.
chosen by the Democratic Party to be our candidate that year.
Right,
And, that's, JFK, 42, 43 years old,
right.
Teddy Roosevelt in his 40s as well, I think 42 years old.
Hmm.
Whichever party starts embracing younger leaders sooner, Elon Musk is thought of as young because he's partly because he's jumping around on stage and looking like an idiot, but
Right.
he is younger in this current environment. But there's 1,000 entrepreneurs and VCs that signed the VCs for Kamala pledge.
Hmm.
We need to get our younger people out there too. And I think I represent that, but I know a lot of people who are in their 40s and 30s who represent it even better than I do.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, those are good points. Now, what advice do you have for anyone considering running for the presidency in the future?
Woo, so many pieces of advice there. Well, the number one piece of advice I knew before I started. I entered the race in October, November 2023.
Hmm.
That's too late. If you're going to run for president, you need two, maybe even 2.5 years of preparation and coalition building. I did
Hmm.
know that going in. I entered late in the race because nobody was running against Biden. And I really thought there needed to be a younger voice with positive, optimistic policies about rebuilding the American dream. So
Hmm.
start early is number one. Number
Hmm.
two would be to figure out how to tell your story in video. And we did figure this out. We ended up getting 2 million views on YouTube. It was probably a big part of how we won in American Samoa and how we got 11% in West Virginia was really good videos. I know we only did YouTube, but if I'd been a better campaigner, we would have done Instagram, we would have done TikTok. We would have had young people speaking to how they want policies that are more geared towards them and the difficulties in their lives. We need to get more younger voters, both registered, energized, engaged. Trump did a much better job of this past election than we did, and I'm very disappointed in that, honestly, because I was focused on younger voters myself. A lot more younger voters are libertarian in orientation, so we have to think about Is the Democratic Party going to be libertarian, pro-entrepreneur, pro-technology, pro-innovation? I strongly believe we need to be pro those things because that's what young people are most interested in. They want to be AI engineers. They want to learn what nanotechnology is. They want to not just be, a general practitioner as a doctor, but they want to be working with new technologies in medicine, gene therapies and things of this sort. So we need to be the pro innovation party if we're going to win. And to get young people, you need to be all about innovation, both in your marketing and your policies.
Oh, I think those are absolutely right on points. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to TikTok, seems to me that Trump saw an opportunity here to cash in on the support of young people who use TikTok all the time for fun. For
Yeah.
fun. I mean, they go on there and they dance and it's a fun platform. And Trump sees this and he's going to be seen as the savior of TikTok. And those people are going to be supporters of his as a result, I think.
Definitely. I mean, I was on TV advocating that we should not shut down TikTok both last week and even a whole year ago. The
Yeah.
security concerns are overblown and hypothetical. And
Yeah.
170 million Americans using TikTok for dancing videos, cat videos, singing videos.
Right.
Admittedly, it's not like there's no national security threat, but there's got to be a more surgical way to do this than shutting the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And, even in the last week, the Biden administration was saying like, it's okay, you don't need to close it down, but they didn't do it with an executive order. They didn't do it in a strong enough way. And so I think you're right. Trump will get credit for this.
Yeah, I agree. You used AI in your campaign, right? For
We
some
did.
things.
Yeah, we used
What
it
what you
two
use it
different
for?
ways. Two
Yeah.
different ways. So one is early in the campaign, I realized that anybody I talked to face like this for more than 5 minutes, they were like, "You've got my vote. I want a younger candidate, and you're sensible, and you've started businesses, and you know what working class people care about." And I realized I couldn't talk to 10 million people and actually win. Uh,
Right.
but I created an AI that I loaded all of my writing into. I loaded portions of books that I really believe where I'd highlighted in the books before, and I created an AI avatar for myself that would talk and speak like me and answer any question that you could ask it. And it got, almost a million views of people who just kind of came to play with it and check it out once the Wall Street Journal wrote about it. And I was on Tavis Smiley's show and talked about it as well. And this kind of got the word out about it.
That's really cool. Now, you did this yourself?
No, well, I'm an entrepreneur, so I found a company that specializes in avatars. I negotiated a deal for them to do it for,
Uh-huh.
I think we did it for about $30,000. I even now sell it on my website. If you go to the Palmer for President website, you can buy an AI avatar of yourself for $30,000 if you really want. And you can live forever and your great grandkids can know like, what did Bob think about X or Y?
30,000.
Yeah. Probably the price will be $3,000 in a year because the prices are coming down so fast. But
Uh,
I wanted to see if I could make it. We haven't had anybody buy it on the website yet. I do think that price is too high. But uh, but when you're the
well,
first
I think it's
campaign
a
to ever
little
use
high.
AI, you got to try what you can try.
Sure.
The other thing we tried, which was kind of neat, was yeah, a lot of this campaign was about sending text messages. You probably got a bazillion text messages like I did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Terrible. It was too many text messages. But when I
Yeah.
started sending out text messages, I was really shocked that the company we were using, they sent us here's 1,000 people that wrote back to your text message. And I was like, people write back? And so I went and I looked and it was like, what's your opinion on Gaza? How do you feel about I'm trying to think. How do you feel about inflation?
Hmm.
Do you think crime is too high? And I actually went one night and I stayed up till like 4 in the morning typing answers one by one to all these people because I thought if I write back to them, they'd be like, wow, a presidential candidate wrote back to me. It
Right.
was exhausting, but it was fun to do
Right.
this. And a
Okay.
bunch of them said, thank you. I appreciate you writing back. And then I was like, there's got to be a way to automate this. So we partnered with another company called Conversica to do a little AI that would like smartly write back with whatever I would have written back if I had time to stay up all night. And that I think helped us win in American Samoa, actually. We did that with more than 300 voters there using the little AI.
How do you think this will be used by other candidates in the future?
I definitely,
AI.
the texting thing I just said, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure use the next time around. Ours was super rudimentary.
Uh-huh.
They probably are going to have more regulations about how AI can be used in campaigns as I had an idea at one point, which I wasn't able to do, where I noticed that the Biden campaign had 400 employees
Yeah.
and we only had four employees at the time.
Okay.
And I was like, well, wait a minute. We could just copy all the titles that they have and we could make AI versions of them. And then we could put LinkedIn profiles for our 396 AI employees doing like digital marketing or PR or like fundraising. But
Right.
I decided in the end it would be too much. I would have had to spend $30,000 per person. So I might as well like hire employees or use volunteers.
You might as well just hire real
But
people.
next time it might be like $3,000 to hire, someone to run my YouTube account
Right.
as not someone, some AI to run my YouTube account as well as, I ran it. So
Oh man.
I'm pretty sure there will actually be, like on org charts, there'll be like, Tom, Susie, AI bot, for such and such job. I'm not kidding. Within the 4 years, this will happen. This will
I
happen.
imagine you're right now. Are you going to be, you could probably take what you've done for your campaign, repackage it and sell it to other campaigns, don't you think?
I've either started or helped start 35 companies, and
Yeah.
it's easier to run it yourself than
Yeah.
it is to like package it for resale. A few people have come to me. One wants to run for lieutenant governor of Virginia and
Uh-huh.
said, "Can I duplicate what you've done?" And
Uh-huh.
I may do it because I believe in him. He's a friend of mine, actually.
Yeah.
But it was a little too much twigs and glue and like put together at the last minute the last time around. It's not really fit for, selling it to another party right now.
Well, you're working on some kind of an AI startup, aren't you?
I am. I've co-founded. I've gone back to my roots as an education technology entrepreneur, and I've helped another entrepreneur who I invested in 5 years ago. I've helped her start a new company that's AI for K-12 education. I can't tell you much about it because we're not going to announce this until April, actually. We're busy building away the technology right now. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but I'll tell you it's for K-12 education, and I do think it's going to revolutionize and make teachers' jobs much easier in the classroom because too many teachers are suffering from burnout. There's too many administrative tasks for them to do. They don't feel like they get enough respect.
Hmm.
And they're being asked to log all these special education reports and behavioral issues and
Hmm.
attendance, et cetera. Sending emails. There 26% of students are chronically absent in schools right now. Like there's all these problems to solve. And Maria, my co-founder, has come up with a genius way to help make teachers' administrative lives easier, but I can't tell you what it is quite yet.
Well, that sounds fascinating. I'd be happy to do this again when you are ready to talk about it. I think
Yeah,
it'd
I'd
be
be happy
cool.
to do that. I'd happy to do that because I do plan
Yeah.
to work in the entrepreneurship sector and impact investing again for the
Yeah.
next, at
Uh,
least 2 years, and then I'll, think about what comes next for the next 2 years after that.
that's cool. Okay. So, how is running a political campaign similar to starting up a company?
It's, I think, super similar. Now, my friends who work in politics, some of whom worked on our campaign, were like, they they kept saying it's not the same, it's not the same, it's not the same, but it's very similar. Like
Uh-huh.
at the largest, we were 8 employees who were paid and 8 volunteers, and that's a lot like a 5 to 20 person company. It functioned very similarly. People had similar titles. Some were marketing, some were sales, although we called it fundraising. Some of
Hmm.
them were operations. The org charts looked very similar. The amount of money required was very similar. To me, they are very similar, running a campaign versus starting a company. except you have
Yeah.
to be a little bit more reliant on volunteers when you're doing a campaign. But I think, the best companies I know have lots of advisors that are kind of working for free and board
Mhm.
members, and they
Mhm.
have a lot of volunteers too. They just don't call them volunteers. They give them fancy titles.
Sure. That's true. Well, I know that I mean I've been involved in political campaigns too, and I did one thing about volunteers is unlike employees, they're hard to fire.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
once they're affiliated, they're kind of always affiliated, right?
yeah, that's right. I mean, they're hard to fire. Anyway, let's see. Tell me about Together. What are you doing with Together? And that's still going on, right?
Together is still going on. So we advocated for 18 young people to be elected to Congress or reelected, and
Hmm.
7 were reelected. Unfortunately, all the new candidates we endorsed, none of them won. A bunch got 46%, 47%, didn't
Hmm.
quite make it. So we learned a lot from that. Uh,
Okay.
I'm actually in the process of hiring a new CEO for Together who is Gen Z herself. Uh,
Okay.
Wood. She has her offer letter. We're doing reference checks, and I hope to announce her in the next week or two. And the goal for this year is really to build up, in talking to all these young people last year, I realized they just want to go to events where they can meet people who are, more expert, more senior in their field. And so when I talked about, going to the Aspen Ideas Festival or Renaissance Weekend or all these, fun events that I go to where I hobnob with, top politicians or top business people, they were like, "Can you get me into those?" And I started getting them in kind of as like a friend of Jason. And then I started talking to the organizers of a lot of these events, and they said, we want more young people at these events. What do we need to do? And so
Hmm.
we've come up with this idea that we're going to create like a scholarship or discount program where you join the Together movement and you can go to Aspen Ideas for 10% of the price if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 30s.
Hmm.
Or you can go to, even like sporting events are a big thing, and you'll be part of the Together section in a baseball game or in a WNBA game. And there are these all these events that are happening all over the place where young people can network and meet people and also just have a, good time in the world with like-minded people who care about politics. Together is about bringing people from all sides. So we're going to be open to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green Party, Forward Party, you name it, Libertarians, everybody.
Hmm. That sounds cool.
It is because, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I want to mention this, that only about 10% of Americans care passionately about politics. The 10% of us that do care, we're more united than we think because we care about our country, we're patriotic, we believe in democracy, with a few exceptions. And we should love each other because we're the ones that want to make the country better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's true. All right. So let's see. What about you?
Yeah. What
What
about
about you? Are you going to run again?
everybody always I always thought politicians were full of it when they said, "Oh, I don't know, whatever." But the truth is, I need to make money right now.
Yeah. All right.
Rachel Maddow was like, "Oh, he's just like Bloomberg. He has billions of dollars." I do not have billions of dollars. I have, I'm struggling to make my way back into the economic world. Now, I'm not really struggling the way that someone who's homeless is struggling. I have my house, I have my car, and I have lots of people who want to hire me to work for them in some way, and I'm doing impact investing again. But, it was very depleting. It took more than half of my cash reserves to actually run for president, and I need to
Uh,
make for the
you
next.
you must if it took more than half of your cash reserve to run for president, you must have had a pretty good pot of money to start with then. Hmm?
Well, people that do math can figure it out. I had saved up a lot of money over 53 years now. I just turned 53 last month. And, but it's still, I have a daughter who's in school. She's going to be in college in not too long. I need to actually replenish the reserves. And I'm going to decide in 2 years if I'm going to run again. Right now, the answer is uncertain.
Okay, so you might. That's a good thing.
I might. I might.
That's a good thing. I hope you do, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I do think people that are listening to the podcast, we're all going to be very demoralized the next 60 days with all of the new policies being passed that don't match our values. And I really encourage you to look further out, look to 2026, because most presidents kind of overstretch in their first 2 years, and then there's a huge swing back where lots of the House turns the other way. And I do think there's a chance that Democrats could win as many as 40 seats in the next 2026 election if Trump goes too far. And it's almost a guarantee that Trump will go too far.
Mhm.
We have to be very careful and pick our battles very carefully. I think there was in between 30 and 40 Democrats that voted for the Laken Riley immigration bill. And I don't love that bill. But at the same time, let's not get hung up on that bill. Let's focus on the fact that the military should not be used within the borders of the United States to be rounding up undocumented persons. Like that is against the Posse Comitatus Act. We need to actually stand up against that. The military should not be rounding up people and, focus narrowly on the things where the American people agree with us.
What about these tariffs?
You mean the External Revenue Service?
Yeah, the External Revenue Service. That's it.
I think Trump is genius in calling it the External Revenue Service. Tariffs are going to go up. He's not just blustering. I don't think they're going to go up to 60%, but he'll use that as a negotiating tactic. I think a lot of Americans believe that if other countries are charging tariffs on our goods, we should charge tariffs on their goods. Now, in the 19, not a lot of people know that in the 1920s, the same thing happened, and it led to the Great Depression. So, though
Mhm.
it might seem like a good idea to increase our tariffs and raise, revenue that way and kind of fight economically instead of fighting militarily, it led to the Great Depression in the 30s, and the same thing could happen here. So expect Trump to do it. It's not a good thing, even though it seems like it might be a good thing in the short term. History is going to repeat itself or rhyme with itself in some way, and that's what's going to happen.
Well, it means that prices are going to go up immediately for people.
Prices will go up, but it'll be on things like groceries. A lot of our produce comes from Mexico, and so those prices will go up. It'll go up on television sets. Like if you're looking at that 55-inch television set for $499, which is an insane price already, you should buy it right now because that's the thing that the price is going to go up by 20%, 30% on when those tariffs go into effect. I know a lot of CEOs, because I work with a lot of CEOs, are buying things in bulk in December and right now that they know they're going to need for the rest of the year, and they don't want the price of those things to go up by 25%. So if you have a
Yeah.
big purchase that's a foreign purchase, you should
Hmm.
buy it now.
Like a car.
Like a
Right.
car is a good example. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I recently purchased a new EV,
Hmm?
and it was pretty expensive. And if a 25% tariff was slapped onto the price of that car, I wouldn't be able to buy it. I wouldn't have been able to buy it.
Not possible. It's too much. It's too much. Now, I
Yeah.
do think in the end, Trump will push for 25% higher, and he'll get probably 50% higher or more on the Chinese EVs that the US is already trying hard to keep out of the country because they're
Right.
much, much cheaper. But, is he really going to slap a 10% tariff on a Ford car that has half of its components from Mexico?
Hmm.
Mm, I think there's going to be some devil in the details there, and
Yeah.
the tariffs are going to be lower, but you should still buy now before the tariffs go into effect because he's very serious about that. It's not bluster. Tariffs will go up,
What do you think the impact will?
just not as much as he's blustering.
Yeah. Would you think people will see through that and start to stop their support of Donald Trump as a result?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is because it'll mostly show up like people will start realizing, oh, this wasn't made in America. That's why its price went up 25%.
Uh-huh.
But this other peanut butter over here, it now says made in the USA in a bigger logo, and it's
Hmm.
25% cheaper. So
Hmm.
people will switch their purchases to US brands. And in about a year, there will be CEOs going on TV and saying, Donald Trump's tariff policy has helped my company. Our sales are up 50%. We're able to hire a lot more people. Could happen in the furniture industry in North Carolina. It could happen in the peanut industry in Georgia. There are a lot of industries that have been sucked down south out of America, to use the words of Ross Perot, that suddenly will have a resurgence because of Donald Trump's policies. It's still not good overall. Like
Mhm.
overall, this comes home to roost because there becomes a trade war between all the countries that leads to a depression and leads to higher prices. But at first, you'll actually see a lot of people saying these jobs are coming back that went to Mexico or that went to China in the past.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think about the pulling out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement, which you did?
I'm opposed to both of those, obviously. We should stay in the Paris Climate Accords. We should stay in the World Health Organization. Um, all that said, both those organizations are a little bureaucratic and can be run more efficiently. And, kind of shame on WHO and shame on the Paris Climate Organization that they have become too bureaucratic. But WHO does more to reduce disease and suffering in the world than almost any other organization. I worked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It wasn't my team, but sister teams worked with them on eradicating polio, malaria, more than 35 communicable diseases that are killing children and adults all over the world.
Mhm.
And it's true that they, I think, did a bad thing at the beginning of COVID when they said, it didn't come from a lab leak, and they kind of shut down dissent and discussion about the origins of COVID and about whether you should wear masks or not. There were errors made at the beginning of COVID. I don't believe in the conspiracy theories that these were intentional by WHO, but they really have never admitted their mistakes publicly, and that's why a lot of people are very upset with the World Health Organization and think that it was kind of a conspiracy to infect everybody, as opposed to people who made mistakes at the very beginning of a once in a 100-year pandemic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
really appreciate the time, Bob, and we've got a tough few months ahead of us, and I'd love to come back in 3 to 6 months and pick up where we left off.
I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. And you can check out upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. Subscribe to our audio version there and to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gaddy and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now it's two. Bob Gaddy is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gaddy, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.